Welcome to Frictionless Commerce, the show for distribution leaders who need digital commerce to deliver on its promise. I'm your host, Matt Johnson, and in each episode, we go behind the walls into the data, systems, and processes that drive success. No silver bullets, no hype. I'm here to bring clarity to digital leaders about how transformation works across the supply chain. In today's episode, I want to challenge something that's fundamental to distribution. And I want to ask a question that sounds simple on the surface, but exposes a blind spot in nearly every distributor that I talk to. If you're ready to grow, let's go. So here's the question. What is the single most important asset in distribution? Is it your customer relationships? Is it your team? Is it your technology? Your supplier partnerships? If you're like most leaders that I talk to, you'll probably say something like it's relationships, or it's people, or it's your network. And all of those things matter deeply. But let me offer a different perspective. What if I told you that the most important asset that you own is your catalog? Because the logic in my mind is brutally simple. And since I've spent my entire life working in manufacturing and distribution, I can tell you that everything hinges around the catalog. So think about this. Products you can't sell do not create customers. And if you do not have customers, well, you have no team. And if you don't have a team, there is no business. So everything in distribution flows through one foundational layer, the ability to represent, position, and move products effectively. And I would argue that that foundation is your catalog, not the warehouse, not the ERP, not the website. It's the catalog. If your catalog management is weak, then everything downstream absorbs the friction. Let me explain why. But first, let me take you in the Wayback Machine to a time when distributors and manufacturers actually printed their product catalogs. Early in my career, literally straight out of school, I worked closely with a buying group, an industrial buying group that produced centralized catalogs for distributors. And really what we were doing, without even calling it, was serious data governance. We built a golden record for the top selling products in our category. And we started by normalizing manufacturer data, the top sellers across all of the top brands in our industry. And we started by doing this, filling in missing attributes. We chased down image. In fact, we would actually photograph images for manufacturers because many of them didn't even have high quality digital media. And we proofed everything across the supply chain before it ever went to print. And here's what made it powerful. Every distributor's catalog was personalized to their brand, to their standards, and to their customer base. It was not generic. It was governed. Those catalogs weren't just marketing pieces. They were sales tools. They were customer service references. They were procurement guides. They sat on counters and desks at the manufacturer level, the distributor level, and the end user in the back of a warehouse or in a truck on the way to a job site. These catalogs were everywhere. In fact, if you get on the job site, if you get inside of a distributor customer service room or a procurement room, you'll see catalogs today. They're still around. They haven't completely died, although the majority of what we think about as a catalog has moved online. But when we built print catalogs, we didn't call it enrichment, right? We didn't call it life cycle management. We just called it doing the work, and it worked. But fast forward 20 plus years, and catalogs are now digital. They are now online, ready for customers, sometimes behind a login, sometimes publicly viewable. but pages became pixels. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Digital experiences and digital technology was supposed to make our lives easier, but fundamentally, the process of designing and publishing a catalog today online is really no different than publishing a print catalog. In fact, I would argue the process didn't get easier, it actually got harder because today you're dealing with more SKUs, you're dealing with more attributes, you have more compliance requirements, you have different customer expectations, there's less margin for error, and in many times, less experienced teams are managing exponentially more complexity. Because when you were building a print catalog, you were limited by the space on the page. You were limited by the number of pages that you could print. Unless you're Granger MSC, in which case you built multiple phone books stacked together in one volume that would put the largest church Bible to shame. But here's the real question, right? If the work didn't get easier, why did we expect the outcomes to improve? Because I want to be honest, I want to level with you right now. Distributor e-commerce sales, not digital sales. I'm not talking about e-procurement or punch out, but distributor e-commerce sales still hovers below 10% of the total revenue in industrial supply. So why is that? It's not a strategy problem. Like, we're investing heavily in e-commerce and e-commerce adoption. It's not a vision problem. Leaders understand this is where we are heading as an industry. It's not a motivational problem. Leaders understand the cost savings, the efficiency gains. We understand the customer expectations that we're trying to solve for the long-term vision of the company. No, it's a catalog management process problem. It's all about executing consistent, excellent catalog management. That's where we fall short. So, what really is the problem with e commerce adoption and distribution? When you dig beneath the surface of underperforming distributor e commerce sites, here's what I see: inconsistent product data, fragmented ownership, bad processes, legacy systems stretched way beyond their original design, and customer experiences that fall short, not because the front end is necessarily bad, although I've seen some pretty bad front ends, but because the data that powers the entire experience is frankly unreliable. And customers, number one, can't find what they need. Number two, they don't trust what they're seeing. Number three, they hit dead ends instead of being guided in the buying process. And once that trust erodes, it just takes one or two bad experiences on your website that lead to dead ends that will make a customer go, nah, forget this. I'm calling in. I'm sending my email. I'm not going to waste my time on this. They have a job to do. These are B2B buyers. Everybody's rushing. Everybody has things to do, right? They don't have time to waste on a bad e-commerce experience. But I want to make this clear. This isn't about blaming teams. People like yourselves are grinding to do your very best to keep up with product data, to keep up with e-commerce experiences. And most of you are working very, very hard. But I see far too many teams operating in reaction mode, trying to keep up, working through a backlog instead of running a smooth, frictionless catalog management process. Which really brings us to the real issue. Catalog management is not a task. It really is a life cycle. The one biggest difference I see between the way that we used to do catalogs and distribution, and what I mean is print catalogs, is that a print catalog is a project. It really is. You start with the ingestion of product data, the product selection that's going to go into the catalog. You do normalize it, you enrich it, you organize it, you publish it, right? But once it's published in printed, it gets delivered, and then you send it out to where it needs to go, and the project is done. But today, an e-commerce site requires all of that I just explained, plus continual maintenance. Products are changing, product categories will change. You're onboarding new vendors, you're removing vendors. So you're adding products, you're removing products, you're updating products. You're continually trying to make it better so that you have a better customer experience, so that more people find you if you do open up your site, which I highly recommend. And also for AI procurement agents who are going out and looking for the right products to solve problems on behalf of their purchasing uh, clients. So it's not this is not a project, right? This is really a holistic operating system. And now we have to think about something that really is one of the biggest challenges that I see in the industrial supply chain, which is the translation problem. Manufacturers speak one language, right? Distributors speak a different language. They have their own, part numbers, for example. That's just the most simplest version of that translation problem. Not to mention all of the different ways of categorizing products and attribution and all of the rest. Every translation that goes through the supply chain introduces friction, which creates cost, which leads to error. And then on top of that, you have the decay that happens, right? Everything that you did in the past is getting neglected. It's not continually being updated. So it's just a reminder that your catalog today is not static, right? It is not printed on the desk, done. It is a living organism. It is more like a garden, right? If you don't go tend that garden, if you don't pull out the weeds, if you don't lay the fertilizer and water it, do not expect to have a healthy crop. And I want to touch on this. There's a lot of noise right now about AI and autonomous purchasing systems. And we see this a lot in retail. And for sure, everything that's happening in retail has a trickle effect into distribution and manufacturing. But let me be clear, right? What I'm talking about is I'm not talking about letting agents run your supply chain, right? I'm not talking about turning over control when it comes to the buying experience. I think we're a ways away from seeing that, right? Like this isn't something that most companies are ready to hand over to AI. But this, what I'm talking about, is using AI, using agentic capabilities. So when I say agentic, the difference between agentic and AI refers to these large language models and the ability for AI to communicate using all of this crazy amount of data, right? And that's great, and then that works pretty well. For example, in a chatting customer experience. However, what agentic commerce means or agentic capabilities is true autonomy. It is creating an outcome or defining an outcome and allowing the AI agent to go and follow steps. But it's more than just following steps, right? Following steps could be just considered workflow. What I'm really talking about is autonomous management of a process, just like you would give a human employee. So here's what I'm working on. I'm working on agentic catalog management. And when it is done correctly, it really means governed rules that humans simply can't keep up with. It means structured signals using data, explainable recommendations based on data. Human approval, right, is essential, at least for now. I see a time, I see in the future, I see a point where we can hand over the reins of our website completely to agentic commerce agents. But when it comes to the here and now, we are able to make continuous learning loops, right? And we can shift the work of our catalog teams, the work of our data teams and marketing teams from managing raw data to managing prioritized decisions, from reacting to optimizing, from maintenance to leverage, right? That's the shift that is going to make a significant impact in the quality of our e-commerce catalogs, our e-commerce experience, and of course, our e-commerce sales. So let me just give you a narrative example of what this can look like. Imagine your system identifies a cluster of high revenue SKUs that also have a low attribute completeness level, right? This is not done randomly. It's not done reactively, but it's ranked, it's identified and ranked by potential impact on sales. And it will show you how these SKUs matter, where the data gaps are, and what enrichment activity, what enrichment would do to improve search visibility and conversion rates, what customer segments might be affected, and when AI is able to put together these insights and prioritize your catalog operations, they aren't guessing. Your team is able to focus on the next right thing that's going to move the needle. They're working from governed intelligence, right? The speed improves, the clarity improves, and most importantly, control improves. This is about controlling the digital shelf, controlling the catalog management process. And the good news is it's not replacing teams, because the teams that we already have, the humans in the chairs, simply are overwhelmed. This isn't about removing them. This is about changing their role, making them AI shepherds and not doing all of the manual heavy lift. This is going to allow them to spend more time focusing on the most important activities and utilizing this kind of technology to accelerate what they are able to output. It makes them more effective than they've ever been, which that's the promise of AI. It's just that nobody is using it in catalog management. And that is exactly what we're working on here at Pivotry. So here's the big idea. The catalog is the most underutilized asset in distribution, or I should say, the most overlooked asset in distribution. But think about it. It drives discoverability, both as a macro standpoint and inside of a website, inside of a category. It drives trust. It creates conversion of new customers. It drives operational efficiency, right? It creates a better customer experience. It drives revenue. It does. Your customer service teams, when they have a clean catalog, will sell more, smarter, faster, better. And for the first time, what's exciting is that we actually have tools to manage this at scale responsibly, right? Not with chaos, not with blind automation, but with governed intelligence. And if you lower the operational friction that happens in the catalog management process, everything downstream accelerates. There will be lower support costs because your customer service and your sales team will have a clean golden record, and it will create a faster, more frictionless buying experience, whether they're selling online or offline. It will create better sales enablement, right? Because when you have the right data foundation, things like CPQ tools and advanced search capabilities and B2B customer portals, all of it works better, and it will create significant operational efficiencies. So let's turn the corner, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but let's reframe this narrative. We need to stop treating the catalog as a support function, as a marketing project, as a marketing responsibility. We need to think of it from the very top level. Get this into the executive boardroom and start thinking of it as core infrastructure. If your catalog were a physical branch, if it were a distribution center, would you let it fall apart? Would you have undocumented processes, workflows, dated technology, and disconnected teams? You would not. You would not leave it undocumented, and you would not let everybody manage it differently. The catalog is core to sales. The catalog deserves executive visibility. And takeaway number 2 is for us to redirect our attention. We need to shift our focus away from flashy features to foundations. Instead of asking, what new digital feature should we launch next? What customer-facing AI tool should we demo? We should be asking, what data decisions are slowing us down? What is happening behind the walls in our manual operations when it comes to catalog, when it comes to e-commerce? Because optimization behind the walls in the pipes beats novelty every single time. And takeaway number 3 is for us to restrain action. Resist the urge to automate chaos. Before you layer in AI, governance must exist. Rules, ownership, standards, accountability. These are the prerequisites to advanced AI capabilities. Agentic systems amplify structure. That's the exciting part. But they also will amplify disorder. That's the risk. Build the discipline first, then you scale it. Well, to wrap up this episode, I just want to say that the future of digital commerce in distribution isn't autonomous systems running wild, as some people might speculate. No, it is governed intelligence accelerating disciplined operators. That's the exciting part for me. And I think it starts with something surprisingly simple: managing the catalog like the strategic asset it actually is. If this conversation resonates with you, bring your head of e-commerce, bring your head of marketing, bring your head of data management, your CTO, your COO, and your president and CEO to a call with me and my team so that we can sit down and talk about how to elevate your catalog management process so that you can empower your digital tools and teams for today and prepare for the advancements that are coming tomorrow. Thanks for joining this episode of Frictionless Commerce. I am always excited to connect with you on LinkedIn. Visit me there. I have the link in the show notes as always. Also, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who you think it would benefit. I'm about bringing clarity and confidence to digital leaders in the industrial supply chain. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you on the next episode.